Welcome to this month's episode of RTO Insights, brought to you by the Association of Progressive Rental Organizations, the National Trade Association for the Rent-to-Own Industry, and sponsored by Rent Direct, a division of Nationwide, the country's largest retail buying group. The topic for this month's episode is "We've come a long way, baby." Back in the 1970s, when the industry was first beginning, it was inundated with lawsuits brought by plaintiffs' lawyers and legal aid lawyers challenging the transaction as a disguised credit sale under the Truth in Lending Act. Plaintiffs' lawyers had gotten rich suing banks over technical violations of the Truth in Lending Act, and those lawyers and their brethren at the Legal Services Corporation thought they might make a buck off of rent-to-own. So we were facing those kinds of lawsuits when the trade association got started. As with any new business back in the day, there were a few bad apples in the industry. This business was perceived as high risk, high reward, and attracted some entrepreneurs who were in for the quick kill. These business owners were not looking for a long-term business they could pass on to their children. They were looking to make a quick buck and then get out of town. One such incident arose in Maryland. Action TV Rental. Action TV Rental got in trouble with the Attorney General and signed a consent decree back in 1981 promising to go and sin no more. A consent decree, very quickly, is a promise extracted by the government against a business that it will do business in a certain way. Basically, it will go and sin no more. 2 years later, 1983, this same company was challenged with 64 violations of that consent decree by the Attorney General, causing the judge in the case to begin her opinion this way. This case chronicles the birth and development of a new industry, and albeit not a particularly significant step in the ascent of man, it nevertheless is a testimonial to the ingenuity and prescience of the American businessman. At the same time, it presents an example where uncontrolled enthusiasm and ambition, despite good intentions, may lead to undesirable and even outrageous results. The facts in this case are rather extraordinary. I'll not recite them all. One quick example: the owner of the company got on the stand and bragged about a collection technique he labeled the one-way switch out. When customers were past due on their TV payments, he or his employees would call the customer and say, "We're from the manufacturer and your TV has been recalled. We're fixing to bring you a new one." They would drive the truck out, they would unplug the TV from the customer's home, stick it in the back of the van, and drive off. The owner explained this was a very easy way to avoid conflicts when repossessing TVs. The result of that lawsuit was a fine and a permanent injunction against the owner of the company. He was forbidden from ever doing business in the state of Maryland again in his life. He moved to California, and that's a tale for yet another episode of RTO Insights. Fast forward to 2011. At a public hearing at one of our many efforts to pass federal legislation to have RTO transactions legally recognized under federal law, the Federal Trade Commission testified. The chief lobbyist for the Legal Services Corporation testified about the rent-to-own industry. Here's what the Federal Trade Commission had to say. The Federal Trade Commission has received only a small number of complaints about RTO during the past year. Out of 1.1 million consumer complaints, only 200 or so involved rent-to-own. Margot Roten-Saunders, the chief lobbyist for the Legal Services Corporation, which is the umbrella group for all legal aid lawyers in the country, testified as follows: "I have to congratulate the RTO industry that in the past 20 years we have seen a substantial reduction in the types of repossession and unfair tactics that we used to see. I think this industry is very successful in the way they treat their customers. I think they treat them very well. We do not want to get rid of the industry." Well, what changed in those 30 years? RTO became a viable and successful business model because the demand was there in the marketplace. Customers wanted the RTO transaction. There were public companies who cannot afford bad press and bad public relations. There is a vibrant franchising community out in the RTO world these days, and RTO has become a family business that indeed owners want to pass on to their sons and daughters, and even lately to their grandchildren. People want to feel proud about what they do. The RTO has become a business that we can all be proud of over the course of the last 30 years, and we are proud of it. Remember, treat your customers like royalty. They deserve it.